The March Air Museum not only features aircraft memorabilia, it also contains a couple pieces of movie memorabilia, like this simulator from the Jimmy Stewart movie Strategic Air Command.
This display is a full-scale mock-up of the B-47, which was used in the movie Strategic Air Command, in which Jimmy Stewart was the star of it, and I believe June Allison was the female lead on that. So this is one of a kind. It's the only one that was built. It was built here at March. The film of the interior of the scenes, obviously, was built so that it could be filmed.
The museum helps educate the public in a number of ways. Special events draw guest speakers from around the country. Honored groups include the Tuskegee Airmen, Women in Aviation, Vietnam-era war dogs, and so many other groups recognized with special days or months. In February, crowds packed the site's theater to listen to the World War II ace, Pilot Lee Archer, talk about the early days of the Tuskegee Airmen, when the influence of a First Lady helped force historic change.
And as he took off with Mrs. Roosevelt, she asked him, Mr. Anderson, could this thing fly to Mobile? And he said, yes. She said, let's go there. Chief turns and goes to Mobile. Now this 10-minute ride now has become an hour and 15 minutes. And Dr. Patterson, who was the president of the Institute at that time, says that the Secret Service was in his office, and the 6 of them were arguing about who was most qualified to call the President Roosevelt and tell him his wife had gone up with some colored guy and was probably dead when Chief Anderson came putting back and landed. Mrs. Roosevelt then convinced her husband, over the will of the Chief of Staff of the Army, they decided that they would do what became known as the Tuskegee Experiment.
Lee Archer's insights brought to life a period in history when most doors were still closed to African Americans. The museum's historian tries to preserve the various presentations on tape so future generations can hear from these historic figures.
This is the first time I've seen Lee Archer himself. I've taped the 3 or 4 original Tuskegee Airmen mechanics that we have here in the Inland Empire. That is the Inland Empire chapter. However, this is only the second ace, the pilot, I've actually taped and was actually met. So I was hoping to meet him and to talk to him, and I thought he gave a very good presentation.
Part of the reason Clugston tapes these presentations is because he knows the speakers won't be around forever. The younger generation always needs role models, and the Tuskegee Airmen certainly fit that mold. According to one of the event's coordinators, they gave him a lot to be proud of growing up.
To pick up the Pittsburgh Courier or one of those newspapers at home to find out what the black troops was doing is just like we'd all hover around the TV to watch Joe Louis fight. It was a thing to know that you had good black role models that were officers and generals and etc.
The museum never stops planning because there's always another special event around the corner. 2003 is the 100th anniversary of the Wright brothers' historic first flight. The director says the museum hopes to showcase one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century.
You know, I had a grandmother that was born before that flight. I just can't imagine what the country would have been had not somebody invented the powered flight. I mean, flight made the country, the world. It shrunk the world. It made us a world power as far as military aviation. I mean, there's nothing that happens in this country that isn't tied some way to flight, which goes back to that first fabric and wood airplane that flew less than the length of a football, less than the length of a C-5 right now. That's cool.
The staff gets excited when important anniversaries come up. They love welcoming in visitors, and especially first-timers. They hope even procrastinators will visit one day.
Well, we have a sign that says open to the public, but I was thinking I'd like to put a sign there that says, "Don't just think about it, stop in." But maybe in the future we can put something up like that.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed meeting the people and learning about the aircraft of the March Air Museum. The museum is open year-round, so we hope that you and your family will stop out and visit real soon. For MVTV3 News, I'm Alex Patton.